What's up, y'all? What's up? Welcome to the Pugilistic Linguistics Show. I am your host, Michael Foster, the voice of reason in an increasingly unreasonable world, and I am back. Before I get started, like I say all the time, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're notified when new episodes drop. Get this out to the masses. Tell your coworkers, tell your friends, tell your Romans, tell your countrymen about this podcast. It don't cost you nothing. Just spread the word. Just say, hey, it's this guy got this podcast. I like him. I like listening to him, and you might also. Or, hey, it's this guy got this podcast. He talks a lot of shit. I don't like what he says, but let's hate on him together. That's fine too. Either way, let's get this out to the masses. All right. So, I come to you on an off day. It's something that's been bugging me. So, as you all may know or may not know, I am a father. I have a teenager. Currently, we are separated by distance, but she knows that I'm her father, and she still sees me as such. And parenthood is a different animal. I had no concept, had no idea about parenthood until I became one. I mean, of course, your friends have kids and people have, you have an idea, but until you have one of your own, you have no idea. And it's probably one of the most terrifying things that you can do in life is have a child. You're responsible now for this life. You're responsible at least up until 18 for his or her successes, failures. Most importantly, you're responsible for keeping them alive. Hell, at its very minimum, keep them alive. I remember being in the hospital with baby head, and I'm like, now what? Now what? This thing gonna come with instructions. How do I know this? How do I know when it's hungry? How do I know when to change it? How do I know? You don't. You figure it out. Like every parent has since the dawn of time. And somehow you figure it out. I loved it when my child started to talk, and then the child could tell me when it was hungry. I feed it. But the thing about having a child, it is not something that you need a license for. It's not something that you qualify for. It's biological. Chris Rock said it best. He was in concert or whatever, and he had just become a father, and everybody started clapping and cheering. He said, "No, calm down. Even roaches have babies." It's not like something that I did that was anything spectacular. You have sex at the right time of the month. Woman gets pregnant, and then biology takes over. It's not something that you have to qualify for. Nowadays in this completely enlightened age, people are reading books and going to classes, and I guess on some level that works. But at the end of the day, let nature take over. Just let what feels natural happen. That's kind of what I did with my child. But the issue is the fact that anybody can have a baby, anybody can have a child. And now we get into some murky waters because even idiots can have babies. And the problem with that is you can really only teach a child as well as you know. You can only teach a child as well as you know. You can't impart any wisdom or any knowledge that you don't have. So you can only teach a child what. So if you're an idiot, if you're a dumbass, what chance does your child have to get beyond that? I'm not saying it's absolute. Some children thrive in spite of their parents. But in a general sense, if you're an idiot, your child ain't got much chance. And then that is what leads me to really the true topic of today's discussion. When my daughter was a baby, I used to walk up to her crib or whatever, and I would just say stuff, how many toes do you have? Let's count them. And we would count her toes. How many fingers do you have? Let's count them. Now, granted, she was a baby. She probably didn't grasp the concept. I'm sure she didn't. But what I was doing, I was instilling in her, I was teaching her what 1 was, what 2 was, what 3 was. And I was consistent with it. To the point where relatively early in life, she knew how to count to 10. I would read to her. So she got accustomed to hearing words and hearing statements. Because what my biggest pet peeve, and we all do it, my biggest pet peeve is baby talk. I can't stand baby talk as the primary method of communication. It's cool when you're playing with them or whatever, but how is a child supposed to understand or get a grasp of the language if you don't use words, actual words? Because when they start to get older and get to school with it, they're going to use actual words. So talk to your child. Like I say, baby talk and all that, it has its place. But that can't be your primary method of communication. Because your child don't learn anything that way. There ain't nothing wrong with calling her pacifier her binky. As long as they understand this is a pacifier. Now, it ain't going to make sense to them then. But as they get older, example, and this is just follow me on this. My uncle used to tell me some things as a youth. Just typical, old wise sayings type things. And I had no concept as a teenager, as a, early teenager, whatever. I had no concept of what he was talking about until it was needed in my life. And it came back to me. It didn't make sense to me then, but eventually it made sense when I needed it. Yeah, counting to 10 with a 6-month-old ain't gonna make an ounce of sense to her or him. I keep saying her because I have a daughter. Ain't gonna make an ounce of sense to them when they're 6 months old. But if you keep instilling that in them, it's gonna make sense as they get the mental capacity to understand what's being said. And now that child has a leg up on other children. And this is a central issue of what I'm getting at. I have a lot of teacher friends. And God bless them, because there's no way in hell I would be able to deal with these badass kids and their dumbass parents without blowing a gasket. There's no way I couldn't do it. So God bless them. I've always said that teaching is not a job, it's an actual calling. You got to be called to that. Because what you have to endure as a teacher in today's schools, badass kids, lazy ass parents, dumbass administrators, I couldn't do it. God bless them. But I have a lot of teacher friends. And I hear horror stories day in and day out about how children come to school, kindergarten, first grade, whatever, completely ill prepared for school. And I'm not saying they aren't ready. You know, kindergartens have meltdowns when they go to, school for the first time. I get that. I'm talking about ill prepared for school, like they don't know their ABCs. They don't know how to count. They can't read. Now, at 5 years old, they should be able to at least do the basics. But they come ill prepared, can't do the basics, and then the parents get mad when the teachers can't make miracles. I'm a teacher. I'm not a miracle worker. You did not prepare this child for school. You did not prepare this child to walk out in the world. And there are far too many parents that are neglectful that way, that just shove tablets and cell phones in their faces and go watch Real Housewives. That's the issue with our generation. And then to make it even worse, when the child fails, it's the teacher's fault. I remember when I was in school and I had an F or I failed or didn't even get a C, I got a D or something. My mother would come to school and she would blame me because ultimately it's my fault. Nowadays, they come to school yelling at the teacher. How dare you fail my kid? Well, your kid don't pay attention in school. Your kid doesn't do his work. What do you expect for me to do? I'm not going to do it for him. Your child don't follow directions. Oh, well, we're doing a new type of parenting to where they can just follow their spirit. Oh, fuck all that. Now, don't get me wrong. Schools are not perfect. They're way too rigid sometimes. They're way too structural. Sometimes there needs to be a free-flowing type thing to let the kid find his way. But there's a fine line to draw here between throwing your hands up and say, just do what you want to do, and locking them down in structure. But there's a way to do it. I've been in classes where it's been done. And I got more from those classes than I did from anything else, from somebody just standing there droning on and lecturing. But at the end of the day, parent, you're at fault if that child shows up to kindergarten or first grade and can't read a simple sentence, can't write a sentence. Doesn't know what a sentence is. That's your fault. You failed that kid. And this world is filled with parents who think they're smart and don't know shit. You provide this kid no structure. You provide this kid with no guidance. You provide this kid with nothing that they need to arm themselves for the real world. That is on you. And then you send them to school and expect for them to all of a sudden make him Einstein? This needs to be a collaborative effort between teacher and parent. Now, I'll be completely honest. I get it. There are some teachers that are just there for the paycheck. I get that. But I'm also noticing there are fewer and further between than it was when I was coming up. These teachers, the majority of these teachers nowadays actually give a damn. But you're not helping them. If little Jimmy gets in trouble in school, little Jimmy should be in trouble at home. That goes without saying. Because if you come behind a teacher, you come behind somebody that undo what's really going on. What do they learn? What do they learn? So, parents, y'all need to do better. This is a at least 18-year responsibility that you signed up for when that child came out of your womb. And this is mothers and fathers. Because if we can get more fathers to stand up and actually be fathers, we wouldn't have such issues that we have. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and we're roughly the same age, so we came up to at the same time. We're Generation X, and we were talking about how different things are today versus when we were coming up. And she told me a story about how it was known among school when she was like in 8th grade. It was known in the schools. I should say known in the schools, and known amongst her friend group that there were no boys allowed at her house. It was widely known, it was well known. No boys allowed at her house. Her father didn't play that. Now, somebody called themselves getting froggy, decided his friend put him up to it. He decided he's gonna show up at her crib. And she proceeded to tell me the story about how her dad grabbed that boy by his collar and his belt loop and walked him home. Sometimes his feet wasn't even touching the ground. You don't come over here for my daughter. She's doing something. She's in school. She ain't got time for y'all. That's how you parent. You come up with this is my line in the sand, and you stand on it. Needless to say, no other boy showed up to her house until much later. That's a parent. That's a father. If we can get more fathers to be fathers, these kids wouldn't have half the issues. I saw a video where it was like 500 Chicago teenagers take over a neighborhood. Where the fuck are their parents? See, that's not. By the time they get to that point in life, the parents have already failed. Because that's not something. When I was coming, look, my dad passed away when I was in third grade. Okay, so it was just me and my mom as I was growing up. And for the life of me, I would never have considered running through my neighborhood with 499 of my closest friends tearing up shit. Why? Because I knew it would be hell to pay with that woman when I got back home. Why? She instilled that in me. Act like you got some damn sense. Act like you got some sense. And if I didn't, I suffered the consequences. That's how you parent. That's what a parent does. When I was a child, not necessarily a baby, when I was a child, they would leave books around the house, and I would read newspapers at 2 and 3 because that's what I had access to. Of course, we didn't have tablets and stuff like that back then, but they made sure that I can get my hands on reading materials. It's to a point, my cousin will tell you, it's to a point where I would rather stay in the house and read than go outside and play. Because they instilled in me how important that was. And again, I may not have understood at that age, but I was following the guidance of my parents. Now, were they perfect? Absolutely not. Nobody's perfect. But they made it up in their minds that whatever move I make is going to be for the betterment of that child. So you may make a wrong decision, but you'll never make a bad decision. That's a parent. We have way too many parents out here that want to be friends with their child. You can't be friends with an 8-year-old. Would you be out in the streets befriending an 8-year-old adult, grown-ass adult? So why would you do that to your kid? Your child needs guidance. Your child needs to be told right from wrong. And your child needs to be disciplined when they do wrong. Now, you can't discipline a kid the way I came up in the 80s. You can go upside a kid's head back then. But whatever discipline looks like, it needs to be consistent. And they need to understand why they're being disciplined. That's a parent. Prepare your kid for the world. Because if you don't, the world is going to shape them in a way that you ain't going to like. This world will chew you up and spit you. This world chews up and spits out the strongest people. So what is a child that has no discipline and no guidance? What chance do they have? Parents, do better. If you choose to have that child, do right by them. Like I say, you get no applause for having a kid. Like Chris Rock said, even roaches have babies. Having a child ain't the issue. Having a child ain't the end all. You got to do something to it. Make it successful as best you can. Now, you're not with them 24/7, so you can't be all on them all the time. Sometimes they're going to have to make their own mistakes, and hopefully they'll survive them. That's a part of growing up. But if you instill in them right from wrong, give them some common sense. So the decidedly American phenomenon of school shootings is prominent. My daughter's at that age to where those types of schools are the ones that have these types of issues. So we've had to have conversations. First of all, it's an abomination when a school has to have an active shooter drill. Ugh. That's an abomination from the pits of hell. When you have to arm and tell children how to survive when somebody walks in their school and shoots it up. That's a decidedly American thing, but that's a conversation for another day. So I've had multiple conversations with her about what to do if that should jump off. Because as a parent, I feel that it's necessary for me to arm her with all the information that she needs to be successful. Hell, in this case, that she needs to be safe. So I basically told her, I said, look, your only obligation is to get out alive. Your only responsibility is leave that building safely and get home safely. That's your only responsibility. Yes, it's in a Pollyanna type world. It's cool to want to save the world and save your classmates. And I say, if you can do that safely and still get out alive, do it. But at the end of the day, your only responsibility is to yourself to survive. Now, it may sound harsh, but as a parent, she is my only responsibility. Yeah, it's tragic if somebody else loses their life. It's tragic. I'm sure some other parents will be. I get all that. And if my child is able to save and get people out, do it. But at the end of the day, your only responsibility is to yourself. That's a scenario I hope never comes, but I'm giving her the wisdom now for when she needs it, it comes back to her. It's being a parent. Dealing with boys. Let me tell you what these boys are going to say to you to try to get in your pants. I talk real to my child. Let me tell you what these boys will say to you. You know how I know? Because I was a boy. Give her game. Give your children game. Prepare your children for every inevitability that you can come up with. I give her game so can't nobody run game on her. That's being a parent. Prepare your kids for the realities. If it's something as simple as counting their toes when they're 6 months old and continuing to do so. Counting their fingers. How many hands do you have? 1, 2. Set up the blocks and count the blocks and make words and do. They may not get it then, but if you do it consistently enough, they'll get it. So then when they walk into school, as opposed to being behind everybody else, they might be ahead of everybody else. Now you're setting them up for success. But I can't tell you the countless number of teachers I've talked to who tell horror stories about kids that obviously haven't been parented. Then the parent want to get mad at the world when their kid fails. You're doing that kid a disservice. Especially if it's always the teacher's fault, because they don't learn responsibility. They don't learn accountability. Parents, do better. Tablets are fine. Let's stop shoveling it in their face every time they want to throw a tantrum. You ever think maybe that's why they're throwing a tantrum? Because they're overstimulated? Give a kid a crayon and a coloring book. And go to work. Prepare your kids. Do better. Because right now, y'all are raising a generation of absolute imbeciles. And worse yet, you're raising a generation of animals. I'm not even going with that. That's another conversation. What they're turning out to be. But you're raising a generation of dumbass animals. So, do better. All right, that's all I got. I'm spent. I spit enough venom into this microphone for today. Like I say to you all the time, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're notified when new episodes drop.